Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight, with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio. Your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
What is your final frontier? For Captain Kirk, it was space. But for us, do you know what it is? Are you preparing for the most important chapter of your life? Well, that's sort of the focus that we're going to talk about today. I'm Red O'Loughlin. I've been here on the USA Global TV and Radio Network for about 5 years. Today's show is called The Wise Ones. Typically, I have a guest, and they're generally business leaders, they're entrepreneurs, authors, but we're talking about them and their success and the wisdom that they can provide to other people. Today, I'm talking about success, but I'm funneling that success down the health highway. I have 5 academic degrees, 7 professional certifications, spent 31 plus years in the military, a naval aviator, retired as a captain, been to 64 countries, married, just turned 58 years a couple days last week, 2 kids, 3 grandkids, 1 great grandson, and generally enjoying life pretty well. On the USA TV and Radio Network, I was the #1 most valued player last year, 2025, and the #3 host or presenter during that same time frame. So enough about me. Let's go ahead and get started on the show. Let me pull up a slide here, and I want to. Okay, there we go. Got that. If you're watching us today on YouTube, which is one of many channels that we have our show on, we have E360 TV, Amazon, Fire, and multiple, about 15, 20 different platforms, not including the follow-up ones on the podcast afterwards. But if you're watching on YouTube, please, thank you. If you're not, and we appreciate you considering USA Global TV and Radio Network platform and the Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck platform on YouTube. Are you preparing for the most important chapter of your life? Well, from an author perspective, that's something that I look at all the time. I write books, so there's chapters, the introduction, all those things are in there. And I chose the topic today of success because it's not something we typically talk about. I've been talking recently about how do you define health? What does it look like? That kind of stuff. But do we ever actually plan for it? And we're going to talk about that a lot today. So I wear a lot of different hats when I'm writing. One of my hats is an aviator hat, helmet, whatever you want to call it, because it's mission driven. Whatever that mission is, that's what it is. But sometimes those missions get interrupted, transferred over to something else, aborted. But if you're looking at a mission, and let's say it's, I want to be a healthy, fully functional guy at the end of my life, last say 20 years, not the end, but toward the end. What are you doing? What can you do? I have a degree in chemistry. I really love diving into the molecular level of the body. But for what we're looking at today, we're not quite down to molecular level, but we're down into the functional level. From a quality engineering perspective, I look at both. Is this right? Is this wrong? You need to look at what is the real truth that I can discern. Are you going to be right 100% of the time? Probably not. But you should be right most of the time. If you're starting to see the same errors over and over again, that's a clue. I was reliability for a while. And a lot of what I'm looking at today kind of falls in that category. Failure. Do you know what failure looks like? Can you plan for it? If it happens, what are you doing? Is it simple? Yeah, I broke my leg, 6 months, I'll be fine. or is it something else? Is it more than a physiological issue? So from a reliability engineering perspective, I'm looking at the failure modes. But more importantly, in today, just like in my earlier show on Talking Heads today, I look at things from a systems level. Individual components, if I'm looking at a molecular level down at the cell, mitochondria, those kinds of things, that's important. But it's also important to look at the systems level. And we're talking here today about basically our brains and how we're planning things to happen. What do I expect today? Don't expect agreement. There's a lot of things out there we may agree on, but I kind of expect reflection. Does this resonate with you? Is this something that's important? Should you start even giving it just a little bit of a thought? So awareness. If you want to make a commitment, is it consistent? Are you adapting? Are you growing? Are you getting stronger? And those are the things that your body does at the cellular level, but sometimes we just don't look at them, from the system level. So if I'm looking at my life, anybody's life, in a book format, the first chapter, our childhood years, we were controlled by our parents, our teachers, our schools, our churches, our in-laws, everybody in our life basically was there. We didn't have a whole lot of decisions to make. For me, it was, lights come on outside, you come indoors, because that's the way the things were. But otherwise, you were out there doing whatever you were doing. But all of a sudden, you start getting into school, and you get into junior high, high school. That's probably our first real goal in life, is the fact that I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, whatever that light means. Some people get away from home as fast as they can. Other people get away from home and go to college. Other people is, maybe the military they want to work, whatever it is, but they have a goal, graduate. So that degree becomes a goal. That's a success measurement. That's a metric. And those things are very common. Now, I have 5 academic degrees. I never, ever actually had, quote, I got to get this, whatever. It just sort of had my first 2 years in chemistry. And it was interesting because I failed PChem, physical chemistry. And I had to go to the draft board and ask for an extension for a year because Vietnam was hot and heavy then. And so I had to, I have to get an extension, otherwise I'm going in the Army. So I got the extension. I joined the Navy. I still ended up in Vietnam, flying rather than walking. So that was a major event, I think. But education is a big part of our life, our goals, because it does set us up for other things. And it's not, college is not, if you asked me 20 years ago, I would have told you that's one of the most important things. You ask me today, and I'm going to say, yeah, it's important, but there's a lot of other things out there that are just as critical. And there are many ways of attaining that. But you look at the, 1 or 2 or 3 chapters down the road, and now you're starting to look at your career, your jobs. What are you skilled to do? What are those kinds of things? So that becomes an important factor. And so you may end up in the military, you may end up moving, you may end up traveling, and whether it's vacation or not, you may end up buying a home, apartment, lots of things going on there because that career, let's assume for a moment, is before you get married. You're flexible. You have a lot of options you can do. If they want to send you to Europe because that's where the plant is at, that you do it. We do things back. We're bulletproof. We don't think about things. We react. Very little planning other than, I want to get this promotion. I want to get this job. I want to live here. I want whatever that thing. You short-sighted, but you see it. It's accomplishable in a couple of years, and that's good because it puts that internal stress on us that we need. We need something that's going to motivate us to get to that next level. But then you meet that person, and all of a sudden, that person becomes the most important person in your life. You get married, you have kids. Now you have to balance your life with your wife, your spouse, your kids, and the environment that you're in. Whether you're living at home, whether you're living away from other family, lots and lots and lots of things are involved in that. And so what is your environment like? What are your habits? As you're going through chapter 2, you develop habits for eating, habits for exercise, habits for all sorts of things. What is your comfort zone? What are you uncomfortable doing, but you'll do anyway? So those habits, many of them are good, some of them are bad, but we don't realize what those habits are doing to us until 10, 15, 20 years later, when all of a sudden the results of those habits start showing up. And so then you have uh, the effects of my sleep habits, my exercise habits, my stress management habits, my dietary choices habits. Uh, those all things add up and they impact your health. They may not impact your health right away. Back when you're bulletproof, nothing, it doesn't matter what you ate. I can imagine, I remember as a teenager, I'd go to a place called Whataburger. They're all over the South, primarily here in Texas. And my normal just going in there getting was three quarter pounders, triple meat, triple cheeseburgers. That was standard. And then a big, huge thing of root beer, not diet. But that was my standard, two triple meat, triple cheese Whataburgers. But as a teenager, early 20s, I never had a problem with weight, never had a problem. In fact, my cholesterol was one of those things I kept asking the question, how much is too low a cholesterol? Because my cholesterol back then was generally in a range of 104 to 114 for my total cholesterol. And it wasn't until I finally caught a flight surgeon about 20 years later, and he says, I wouldn't worry about anything unless it's under 90. Okay, finally had somebody tell me something. But it's not those things we think about, the little things like today, awareness. I may see something, didn't know that. Maybe I need to know a little bit more about that. So those are the things that we're starting to look at. Okay, so our goals change. Your goal as a 20, 25, 30-year-old, newly married, with kids, without kids, those all change. Maybe you need a master's degree. Maybe you need more specialty. Maybe you need more training in a particular app or something. Our goals change because our needs change. Our vision at 20 is not the same vision we have at 40. At 60, we're looking at retirement and other things. Lots of things occur down the road, and those are the things that we need to be aware of. So if my goals change, that means my perspectives change. My perspective at 20 is not the same perspective at 40. So if I have family and kids, those needs have to get factored into my other perspective. So as my needs change, you have to adapt. And as you get closer to retirement, things pop up. I need money to retire. Okay, well, that's a tangible. You know what you have, investment, you have this, you have that. Maybe you have a retirement job. A lot of people retire and get something that provides a decent level of cash flow. But some of those things we don't think about is our mental health the last 20 years of our life, our physical health the last 20 years of our life. Because once you turn 80, and I'll be 80 in September, things are not working as well as they used to. Yeah, they still work, but they just don't quite have the same power they used to have. And I'm talking about from the cellular level in the body, mitochondrial. We produce a fair amount of energy to meet our body's needs, but that power can be impacted by a lot of different things. And those things that create problems also correct problems. Kind of funny, but that's the way it works. So if I wanted to look at just a little bit of the metrics, not many, but a little bit, if I said define success, I go I'm preparing for today's program. I go in there and I said, success, tell me about it. Well, it gives me a lot of options, and it depends on what you look at. What does society tell us? Well, the first thing I came across is the Bible. A lot of biblical expressions for success, but almost every single one of them were oriented outward from the body, not inward. Today we're looking at recognition, status, possessions, promotions, etc., achievements, money. But back 2,000 years ago, it's what can you do for others? And totally different society back then. So what society tells us touches us on the things that we can really and truly feel and touch and appreciate. But when I start looking at freedom and mobility, if we're bulletproof, we don't even think about mobility. If we're bulletproof, we don't even think about clear thinking. Those things are just automatic. But as you get older, maybe and not always, purpose and contribution enters the theater. I've seen some people that I've known for decades, and the way they were when we were, back as young officers in the military and we're overseas somewhere, what we thought about purpose-wise or whatever was never discussed, but it did come up occasionally over a beer or two. But it wasn't anything. What do you want to be when you retire? Okay. What did I want to be when I was a kid? A cowboy. It's just one of those things because that was the environment I lived in. But another thing I've noticed, and it kind of surprised me a degree, I consider myself a reasonably religious, spiritual person, but a lot of people that wow, that's interesting. Their relationship and their faith became very much stronger once they hit about 60, 65, 70 years of age. And then some of them actually want to write a book or do a video or do something about a legacy. They want to be able to accumulate what they've done and put that into something. And whether it's an autobiography, whether it's a series of short videos, I have a great grandson, 2.5 years old, a little over 2.5. I'm thinking about doing a series of 10-minute videos, put it on YouTube. That's just, okay, what was I like when I was 5 years of age? What do I remember? And then going to different places. So those are things. Legacy can be done a number of different ways. But with the technology we have today, you pick up a cell phone. I can sit here and do a 10-minute video and just talk about whatever I want. And that's an option that we can consider. But if it doesn't matter to you, it's not going to happen. So the perspective is when it matters, you'll do it. But what happens if you never get to when it matters? That happens quite a bit. So if I looked at retirement, for most of us, we think money. That's all we think about. So we work, we put savings there, we buy this, we invest here. We do a lot of financial planning, but we do very, very, very little physical, mental, social, emotional, spiritual planning. We usually, let's wait till we're 70, we have time to do that. But the financial planning is something that builds up. Well, wouldn't the physical and mental planning build up just as much as the financial planning? One would think so. It's there, it can be done. I can remember back very active, in the military, I had to do a lot of physical readiness testing and things. Then I fell in love with running, ran a bunch of half marathons. I was running 5Ks and 10Ks almost every weekend. And then all of a sudden, Agent Orange knocks on my door and says, not so fast. And so some of my physical activity has been curtailed a little bit. But that doesn't stop my mental planning. But these are things that I'd like to get into just a little bit more, and we're going to do that. We're going to take a short break here, commercial break, be back in about a minute and a half, and we'll get back more into the physical, mental, social, emotional, and spiritual aspects of successful retirement.
What if many of the problems we associate with aging are not random? What if there are identifiable causes behind declining energy, chronic disease, and memory problems? We have been told that aging is simply something we must accept, that slowing down is normal, that growing older means growing weaker. But what if that's only part of the story? Why do some people remain active and engaged well into their later years? Why do others struggle with disease, fatigue, and declining health? What is happening beneath the surface? What processes drive aging? In Aging Sucks, researcher, educator, and author Red O'Loughlin explores what researchers have discovered about why we grow older. No medical degree required, no confusing jargon, just clear explanations of what researchers have discovered about the processes that influence aging. You cannot stop aging, but understanding its causes may help you make better decisions about your health, your future, and your quality of life. Because understanding comes before action. Action creates hope. Aging sucks. End the guesswork. There is hope.
Red O'Loughlin here. We're back with planning for our health and our later years. We talked very briefly about financial planning, which is something that we do all the time. But the physical, mental, we just don't. I think it's more of an awareness issue than anything else. Yeah, we end up in habits, and if we're not going to the gym all the time, we're not doing that, it's not important to us, it doesn't happen. And then the mental planning is something we, our brains just kind of operate, but are we eating the right stuff? Are we being challenged enough? A lot of things there. And then on the other side, the two things that we probably don't do very much at all is that social and emotional thing. relationships. You had a bunch of people you used to work with. Maybe you go out once a quarter and have a dinner. Maybe the people that just our social and emotional world keeps shrinking. People die, people move, things happen. And so it's super critical, particularly when you get into your retirement age, I'm going to say 55 and beyond, that a major portion of that retirement mental health, emotional health, is the relationships that you're maintaining. If you have none, your chances of coming down with something is far greater than somebody who's a busy beaver or social butterfly. They're just going around and just involved in all sorts of stuff. Again, spiritual life. From what I've seen, a lot of people ignore it through most of their life. Then all of a sudden they hit 50, 60, 70 and becomes important again. And for some, if their habit is such that it wasn't important and never has been, there's nothing there. But it is an important part of our lives. If I look at something like a Maslow's triangle, you have the foundation. Okay, for us, it's health and mobility. Our bulletproof years, we could do anything because there was nothing we couldn't do. I could do this. I could go anywhere. That was it. I was able to think. My relationships are pretty good. If I know who I liked, who I didn't like, it was very clear on that bottom end of things. But then we had, because of our education, our jobs, our family, our location, we had options. And as you get older, some of those options go away. Your kids grow up, you're empty nested. Somebody comes down with a disease, neighbor dies, relative dies, all sorts of things happen. And you start thinking, I wish I had planned for this a little bit. I wish I was aware of this a little bit earlier, not necessarily planned for it, just aware of it. But when I finally get to that point in time where I'm not working for anyone, I'm enjoying life, can I enjoy it financially, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically? Those are the things that are super important. And so success at the lower ends tends to breed success at the upper ends. And so I'm looking at this thing here, and this is probably to me one of the more important slides, because I'm looking at it and I'm saying to myself, okay, I have my, mental health, emotional health, etc. That's all part of the body. And if I want to have successful aging, I need to really control my lifestyle choices. But if I start looking at this thing with more of an engineering brain, my aviation brain, my reliability engineering brain, I'm starting to say, maybe there is something. If I'm going out for a flight, pre-flighting, you're doing a lot of things. You're preparing for an emergency. You get on a commercial airliner, they do here's the windows, you exit out, here's the oxygen mask. All of these things are there. But when I'm looking at a system, I'm looking at how can it fail. So my view right now is, okay, I'm 80 years of age, or will be shortly. What's going to fail that I can prevent? I've had some interesting stories over my life with physical things that you can control. One, I worked for a company back in the early 80s before the downturn in the oil industry. And their experience was, we're going to take 2 tools to an oil rig and 2 extra sets of electronic, and hopefully we'll be able to do the job and get back. Why would you need to take 2 tools, 2 extra sets of electronic, unless you had a hellacious failure rate? So it was one of those times when we're just starting to lay off people. Talked to my boss about hiring a reliability engineer. And we got one. We came in, we had a lot of sessions with the engineers, and we sat down from scratch and started looking at, here is a particular tool. Tool was a 3 3/8 gamma ray neutron bond tool, 3 different tools, all modular construction. And we sat down and we looked at, here's the electrical, pneumatic, hydraulic, all of the different pathways that information was going back and forth. What can fail? How can it fail? Can it fail a better way? If it fails, how is it to repair? So we started looking at that, and we set a goal. And this was the important thing. Nobody had ever really set a goal there before. So we said 19 out of 20. That's 95%. If we can achieve a 95% success rate, we should be able to do very well in the industry, because not everybody had that rate. Well, the gamma ray tool went out, had 44 jobs in a row before it failed. That's pretty good when you plan for 19 out of 20 and it goes 44. The neutron tool went 77 jobs in a row before failure. Much better. I got laid off. Actually, I didn't get laid off. I got transferred to another company, and 6 months later, I was gone. I started with 25 people. I had 50. By the time I got transferred, I was down to 3. Then, that's the very, very bottom of the oil industry collapse. And adios. But the bond tool, from what I knew at that time, went over 100 jobs. I don't know if it ever failed. Probably did. I just don't know about it. But that's a physical thing, something we can touch and control. We plan for it. We get engineers looking at it. This is what we need to do. But what about just the normal stuff in your life? Your car. I generally never, ever, ever sell a car. I drive it till the wheels fall off. Early in my life, I was getting easy 200,000 miles, then 300,000 miles, then 400,000 miles. The last car I sold, it had 426,000 miles on it. So I have a car right now. Am I going to keep it? Yep. But you got to maintain it. And so that preventive maintenance allows you to go in there. So if I'm doing preventive mental health, preventive physical health, preventive emotional health, that's great, because I'm doing preventive financial health all the time because I can see that one. But these other ones we don't see. But what about people problems? Mother-in-law, cousin, neighbor. There are a lot of solutions. I was over in Korea a lot. We had what we call a deployable port security and harbor defense operation. I had 2 Coast Guard units and 9 Navy Reserve units, and I would send them overseas to operate. And when I'd get over to Korea, I would have Coast Guard unit, 1 or 2 Navy units, along with a lot of other port security, both Korean and U.S. And they were all integrated with each other. And I says, it would be neat, really neat, to get some of these young kids out of Monterey from the language school, come over here and let them practice their Hangul, the Korean language. Well, I brought them over, and kind of a big mistake in a way. I didn't understand the cultural dynamics. The Korean naval officers are not real gung-ho on communicating with enlisted, just a very caste different system. Okay, that didn't work very well. So next year I said, you're coming back again, either you or some new people. Leave all your military uniforms at home. I don't want to see a single uniform. Come in civilian attire. So they came back next year as consultants. Worked great. Absolutely had a wonderful time. Really added to the ability to make the integration between the Korean and the American forces work super well. I also sent troops over to Bahrain. They would go over there and work with the Bahrainis. Well, at that point in time, I had a Coast Guard unit that I put in charge of that particular one. I had a Navy unit there too. But the senior Coast Guard officer was the senior of everyone. I put her in charge. But the Bahraini officers didn't like talking to females. And that became an issue because she would show up at a meeting and no one, just kind of be quiet. So on paper, I changed the executive officer, who was a Navy captain, male, to be the CEO of the entire exercise. He would go to the meetings, wouldn't commit to anything, but would bring his notes back, consult with the CEO, the female, and she would make a decision. He would go back and say, here's what we're going to do. And so that worked out well. But again, when you start looking at people problems, that's a different animal. So I have physical problems that I can deal with. I have people problems that are part of my life that can create stress. But I have my own internal problems, and those are the things we really don't think about. I have my metric for one of my sales for my books is I cater to women 55 and older. Why? 2 reasons. Usually they're empty nesters. They're at the end of their career, and they're saying, I don't want to be like my parents because they can't do what I can do. So they're seeing health issues 20 years down the road, and they don't want to be there. And they have the time right now because they're getting ready to go into their own retirement about being able to do things. So when you do that, that becomes, okay, I really need to do something to me today so I'm not like my parents down the road. That is a clue. You're seeing something that you want to be able to change. So if I'm looking at my platform up here, my successful next chapter, and I have my financial resources okay, I'm working on my physical, my mental, my emotional, etc. So long as my pillars are fairly strong, great. And if you've been in management or you've seen things around, they have this kind of like a pie chart. It's a, I'm not even what they call it, we call it a health chart, but they end up with maybe 5 or maybe as many as 15 different spokes coming out. It may be financial and spiritual and emotional and all sorts of things. But you put yourself 0 at the center, 10 on the outside. Where do you rank yourself on physical? Where do you rank yourself on mental? Where do you rank yourself on skill levels? And the whole purpose is to balance the center part. If you're around 10 all the way around outside, you're a superhero. But if all is around a 1, you're suffering from everything. But that wheel, it's focusing you on balance. But do you need balance? Right now, all of these things, let's say they're all at 6. Okay, that's fine. But if you're not planning, maybe you don't have a spiritual life. So I take that one off the end. It can still balance on those 4. That's not a problem. But what if I start having mental problems? That goes down. Well, I still have three pillars that are the holding things up. But things change. Just because they're that way this year doesn't mean that physical is going to go next year. And now 2 things are holding me up, not all 5. So you need a good foundation, and that's part of what we're talking about today. Are you making the right decisions? Well, how do you make a decision unless you have the right mindset of understanding what is and isn't possible? So, this says 20 years. I don't know. I'd say 5 years. I don't think you can go bad with 5. I think 20 is okay, but it's almost touchable, but 5 is touchable. But what makes you happy? Because what makes you happy at 50, 60, 70 is going to make you happy at 70, 80, 90. You may not be able to do as much of it, but happiness is a major part of our later life. So what are you going to do today with regard to your diet, your exercise, your stress management, and the quality of your sleep? If you are maintaining those within a decent zone, you're going to do well because your body has the ability to maintain a good, healthy environment. If you're not doing them, you're now subject to accelerated aging, a limited retirement, and an increase in risk of disease. And the same thing if you're overdoing some things. If I got $14 million in the bank and I have no health plan, nothing, now all of a sudden I'm lopsided, things can go awry very, very, very quickly. So those are the things that you need to look at. Internally, what can you control that's going to actually help you down the road? So if I'm looking at that important chapter at the end of my life, it isn't behind me. What's behind me is all the experience and the habits and the knowledge and the ability to make changes to that next chapter. So we're not creating tomorrow, we're planning for tomorrow, but we're doing it intelligently because the decisions I make every single day, I use a term, your body is listening. It's always listening. No matter what's happening, your body is listening. Now, whether it's eating, stress, sleep, your body is listening. It has biological programming. When this happens, this happens. So you're eating junk food, this happens. You're managing your stress, this happens. You're exercising, this happens. You're whatever it is, your body is always listening. And so if you eat right, exercise right, etc., all those things are going to accumulate to your final chapter. That chapter that says, I can do what I want when I want to do it. And that's kind of a mark, I think, a major mark in what we're looking at with regard to having a wonderful retirement. My book, Aging Sucks, talks about the causes of damage and what we can do about it. So if you're looking at what can you do today, Aging Sucks it's not a health book. It's not a longevity book. It's not an anti-aging book. What it is a book to help you understand the complexity of aging. And there's a lot of things that cause aging, but there's a lot of things that sustain repair. So long as our body can repair the damage that accumulates, we're healthy. But not the moment, but the extended period of time where accumulated damage exceeds our ability to repair it, now we start having a problem with accelerated aging, with the inability to do things we want to do, increased risk of disease. Those are all things that become a problem because that last chapter of our life, our world, is being torn apart because we can't do what we had planned to do or didn't plan to do, expected to do, and it's not there. With that, I'm going to go ahead and shut this program down just a minute or two early today. I appreciate everybody's time and involvement. I look forward to seeing you next week. And so, Red O'Loughlin signing off from USA Global TV and Radio Network. And again, on YouTube, if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe to USA Global TV and Radio Network and Dr. Jacalyn.
What if many of the problems we associate with aging are not random? What if there are identifiable causes behind declining energy, chronic disease, and memory problems? We have been told that aging is simply something we must accept, that slowing down is normal, that growing older means growing weaker. But what if that's only part of the story? Why do some people remain active and engaged well into their later years? Why do others struggle with disease, fatigue, and declining health? What is happening beneath the surface? What processes drive aging? In Aging Sucks, researcher, educator, and author Red O'Loughlin explores what researchers have discovered about why we grow older. No medical degree required, no confusing jargon, just clear explanations of what researchers have discovered about the processes that influence aging. You cannot stop aging, but understanding its causes may help you make better decisions about your health, your future, and your quality of life. Because understanding comes before action. Action creates hope. Aging sucks. End the guesswork. There is hope. Every day, we wake up knowing what we should do. We know we should take better care of ourselves. We know we should have the difficult conversation. We know we should stop making excuses. We know we should invest in our future. We also know we should take the first step. So why don't we? It's not because we aren't smart enough. It's not because we don't have enough information. And it's certainly not because we don't care. We live in a world overflowing with knowledge. Books, podcasts, videos, courses, experts, even artificial intelligence. We have more access to information than any generation before us. Yet so many of us are still waiting for the right time, waiting to feel ready, waiting until tomorrow. But tomorrow becomes next week becomes next year, and before you know it, another opportunity has passed us by. The truth is, knowing has never been the finish line. It's only the starting line. Our lives don't change because we know more. Our businesses don't grow because we know more. Our relationships don't improve because we know more. And our health doesn't transform because we know more. Everything changes when we act. When we choose courage over comfort, progress over perfection, action over intention. The question isn't, what else do we need to know? The question is, what are we going to do with what we already know? Stop. Why Knowing Isn't Enough by Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Because knowing opens the door. Action changes your life. Available September 2026.
USA Global TV and Radio proudly presents Tracy Cram-Perkins, a dementia caregiving survivor teaching how to balance care with peace of mind. #1 resource for dementia caregivers. It's the book Dementia Home Care: How to Prepare Before, During, and After. Over 17,000 copies sold of this must-have guide. And now a testimonial from Tracy Smith.
If I was to describe this book to someone who is going through a similar situation, I would underscore how important it is to have some sort of a tool or a guidebook to help you through certain stages. And there's so many, it's such an unknown topic to the average person. And to have this as a reference is essential. It's going to help you get through it personally, as well as help your loved one manage.
To learn more, go to TracyCramPerkins.com. Tracy Cram Perkins is an award-winning author. She's also the host of Dementia Home Care television show. Watch it here on USA Global TV and Radio. People are searching for experts every day. Are they finding you, or are they finding someone else? Every day, professionals are building authority through media. We've already built the platform. USA Global TV and Radio. Over 14,000 shows streamed to over 60 countries. This isn't about becoming famous. It's about leverage, visibility, credibility, opportunity. One interview, one conversation, one show, repurposed into content, connection, and business growth. Most people assume hosting a TV show requires a studio, a production team, and a massive budget. Our television packages begin at $1,500 US per month. Professional production, global distribution, replay visibility, built for voices with something to say. I'm Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, and if this resonates with you, we should talk. USA Global TV and Radio, all rights reserved. Contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honoured to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USA Global TV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.